Hey Titans and young designers, we are going to ultimately be making a Final Cut Pro project from this, but the setup starts back in Illustrator with our logo project. So it's important to mention that if you made any previous logo variations using Illustrator, that you could use your favorite variation of your logo. You don't have to use your original one. That said, let's keep moving forward. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a duplicate of my logo and move it to the side. So to do that, I'm going to use my selection tool, select the entire logo, hold down the Alt button, and drag it wherever I want it. But as you can see, I already have one there, so I'm going to go ahead and delete this. The next step is we're going to start basically disassembling our logo. So we're going to take the entire thing and also put it off the page, but next to your page. So you want to start bringing in different parts of it. So you still want it to look relatively the same though. So for instance, if anything is grouped, by the way, the first thing you want to do is Command Shift G or Object Ungroup with the whole thing selected. So I'm going to go ahead and Object Ungroup. And then I'm going to try and bring in one element of it. Now you can see if I take this off, this is like the double outline. If I take it off and I try and put this next part on, I have to replace it exactly, which is kind of a choice, but I would rather get it together. So I'm going to drag the selection tool over just parts of both of them and bring them in. I want this object to be separate from the next object in my logo, and you'll find out why shortly. The next thing I want to move is my letter. So I'm going to grab it. I want to keep the shadow and the actual letter together. So I'm going to move them separately as well. And you'll get to decide somewhat like what things you want to put together. I basically am like considering the different elements of my logo. So like one thing is the S, but I want to keep the shadow with it. One thing is the overall shape, which is the original outline, and I want to keep the double outline with that. And then I want to keep my oval together. So my oval actually has two parts. It has a part where it's just an outline that just covers the edges of the flames because they're a little bit messy. And then there's also the purple oval. I want to keep those together as well. So I'm going to select both of those and bring them to the side. And then I have all my flames. Now right now, because I just ungrouped, all my flames are separate. So if I move any of them on their own, I'm going to lose where they are in reference to each other, and putting them back exactly will never exactly happen. So instead, I'm going to keep this whole area as a group. So I just grouped that area. So now I could just group up all my elements to make sure that there are no problems going forward. So I'm going to Command G them all. Now that I have all of the elements of my logo separated, just like we did early on in the project where I drew my flames, then I drew my, my oval, and then I separately got a font from the internet. In my case, I drew mine. And then, of course, the shadows and outlines are with their components that they were made for. But otherwise, I have all my elements separated, and that's kind of how you want to start this project. The next thing I'm going to do is basically take screenshots of each element on its own. So I'm using Command Shift 4 to create a screenshot. So now I have just the white background and my my outlines. Then I'm going to take one of just my flames. Again, Command Shift 4. Then I'm going to take one of my S symbol. And actually for this, I'm going to need my ovals separated. So I'm going to Command Shift G them and move my clear oval away from my purple oval. So now on my desktop, you can see that I have separate screenshots of each of my logo elements. The next step is actually bringing them to Photoshop before we take them into Final Cut. So I'm going to open up Photoshop. The reason that I wrote this is SML, which stands for Squirrel Man logo, and then I put a part number here because there's going to be multiple parts. So I'm going to press OK. So as we bring our pictures into Illustrator, we don't have to place them, just press return. You'll see a little icon come up here, and I'll explain that in a sec. It's because we're bringing them directly from here and not from the internet. So I'm pressing return as I go. Also, I want to show you the next steps because some of you might choose to do this in this order. Some of you might choose to do them all first. That's your choice, but we're next going to do our favorite trick, which is switching from our quick selection tool to our magic wand tool, selecting the background, and we're going to press delete. Now it's not going to work, by the way. So we're going to press OK, and this is how we're going to get rid of this little feature, which basically says that we can't edit it. We're going to click it with our eraser tool, which rasterizes it, which means it's creating an editable picture from it, because right now it is not editable. And then I'm going to press delete, which allows me to get rid of the background. Also, I know that there's a white space here that's still there, so I'm going to go ahead and delete that as well, even though I have no background telling me that I know my own logo, so I of course know that. I'm going to go back to this layer and do the same thing. So I could use the magic wand, press delete, it won't work. I could skip that step now that you know what it is. I could just grab the eraser tool and then press OK and delete it, and now you can see that that checkerboard represents clearness. So right now our logo is clear, and just so you could see what it looks like, I'm going to go to the background. I'm going to Command D my deselection. You don't have to actually do this. I'm just doing this so you know what's happening. And I'm going to go ahead and throw some paint on my background so you could see, you know, that everything else is clear. All right, so now I'm going to bring in my next random. By the way, it doesn't really matter what order I bring them in. I noticed it came up lower, so I'm going to move that up. But before I even do that, I have to press return because there's basically a transformation that was open there when I brought it in. Now I'm going to do the same thing as always and grab my selection tool and grab my eraser tool, press it once, OK, and then I can press delete and it works. Now I see that it came in like a little bit off. The sizes are correct at least, so all I have to do is use my move tool and kind of move these into place. If you can't quite get it, you can use your arrow tool. Okay, so next we're going over to this oval that I have here just because I wanted to cover up the bad edges of my flame. And I need that oval to be completely clear, so I'm going to the inside of it, selecting that white space and pressing delete, Command D. You might not have an object like this, but I'm going to put that in position over my other oval and have it so that it overlaps my flames and my other oval. So once you've placed all your layers in their correct positions, you're going to shut them all off, and including the background. So you want to see this clear checkerboard, and then you're just going to put your images in one at a time. And I wanted this to appear white because I want the white to appear in my logo, so I wouldn't have deleted this white. When my logo, my logo should look the way I wanted to in my production logo when I get to this point. Anything you want to be white, make sure it's not clear. Anything that you want to be clear, make sure it's shown in these checkerboards. All right, so now we're going to save each part. So we're going to go to Save As, and you have to save them as PNGs, which will keep this clear when we bring it to Final Cut instead of making it white. So you're going to change each part to a PNG, and you're going to label your parts. This is my bottommost part, so I'm naming it 1. Also, it's a good idea to make sure you're saving it to your desktop. The next thing I'm going to do is click this off, click the next layer on, and go to File, Save As, and save that as a PNG. This is part 2. Part 3. And you basically do this for all your separate parts. Okay, so you're done with the most annoying part of this project. The rest is all creating your production logo and creating movement with your pieces and making them transition together. The last thing I'm going to say, though, is that you should absolutely file save this because you never know if you're going to need it again. So when you save, I'm going to save as parts so that this is all my parts together. Keeping it a PSD because that'll allow me to keep everything separate and there and in different layers. So if I need to come back to this, I can. I'm going to press save, and that's the end of the setup. The next part of this is going to show you how to insert your all your separate parts into Final Cut and then create movement and have transitions to make your logo come to life and have an animated look to it, so that you could use that in front of any future movies that you might make perhaps in the high school or in any other area of life if you want to use this as your production logo. All right, Titans, I hope you enjoyed this video. Please leave feedback and tighten up, guys.